Welcome to Habits Unplugged. Today I'm going to share with you 5 tips on how you can quickly overcome any fears that you might have about stopping drinking alcohol. Now, if you don't know me, I'm Kevin O'Hara, owner of habitsfeed2.com. We coach people to tap into their potential for growth instead of tapping out with alcohol. Now, before we go on, I don't want to waste your time, so this advice is purely for people who want to stop drinking alcohol and use it as a springboard to grow their life. So if you're looking for another dopamine fix, this is probably not for you. Now, it seems like my whole journey with alcohol really has been involved in trying to appease one fear or another, right? You know, I started out with fear way back when I started drinking. I mean, I had my first drink when I was 12, but never really started drinking until I was in my late teens, 17, 18. And I started through fear, right? Fear of being left out, fear of looking like an idiot, fear of my own shyness, my own self, looking like a wimp, walking into a bar as a young man and knowing that I was the only one with no experience in this bar. Everyone else had experience. So there's insecurity, there's lack of confidence, all that kind of stuff. Once I started drinking, then I drank in fear because I started to use alcohol as a crutch. That's a fear tactic, right? I started using alcohol as an escape, which is a fear tactic. It has all the elements of fear attached to it. I quit alcohol because of fear, right? Fear of what I had done and what I was doing to encourage my son to take up this drug, right? I also had fear for my health, fear for my mental state, for my brain itself, for my relationships, fear of getting older with nothing to show for it. And then I quit drinking alcohol, and once I quit drinking alcohol, I had a fear, right? A fear mostly of the unknown. What if I couldn't hack it? What if I failed in this journey and I made just another fool out of myself, right? Insecurity again. I had fear about what kind of a life that I would live without alcohol, fear of what kind of a person I would become without alcohol. And all of that was unnecessary. All fear is unnecessary because none of the fear is in fact real. Hindsight is 20/20, but again, what would you do without it? Looking backwards, hindsight has taught me that all fear comes from insecurity, from a lack of confidence, from not believing in your own abilities to deal with these things. And all of this is a skills problem. You learn the skills, you solve the problem. You have a problem, you're looking for a solution. It's normally that you don't have the skills. And I'm talking about skills in terms of not only things that you learn, practical things that you learn, but thinking skills, emotional skills, Feel the fear and do it anyway. Fear is only as deep as your mind allows. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. I think the last one was from Teddy Roosevelt. Stepping through that door and stopping drinking alcohol is not going to stop all the fear. If you haven't prepared yourself in the right way, if you haven't put yourself in with good growth mindsets, it's not going to leave you. It's part of life, I think. You still have problems to solve once you stop drinking alcohol. You have problems to solve, the problems that you created in the first place. But you can learn the skills, you can get the knowledge, and you can solve any problems that are standing in your way. We're all scared. As I said, sometimes in life can be scary. That's one of the reasons why people want to escape alcohol. They want to disappear from that responsibility, at least for a while. Think about it. It's like a chemical version of putting your head in the sand. If you can't see what's coming, it's not real. If your brain is so banjacked by booze that you can't think clearly, then none of these problems really exist, do they? At least not in the moment. So I want to give you 5 tips that I know will quickly help you to conquer the fear of alcohol. First, if you're finding this helpful, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss out on any future videos. The first tip is to understand where your fear is coming from. Fear stops a lot of people from changing more than anything else. It keeps people rooted in their old lives. And I think there are 3 main fears, or 3 main categories of fears. There's fear of rejection, fear of loss, fear of the unknown. I take fear of the unknown. Everything about your future is unknown. Everything when you step across the line, especially when you're making a change in your life, is unknown. I was really afraid of what my life was going to be like once I stopped drinking alcohol. But you know what my biggest fear was? Missing out on my precious booze. Missing out on my ability to be able to escape, to stick my head in the chemical sand for a while. And the reality was, I knew the path that I was on was one that was leading me to a place that I didn't want to go, right? A downhill slide, a spiral into all kinds of sicknesses and illnesses and diseases, followed by an early death, a much earlier death than I planned anyway. You know, I didn't know the exact details of how that was going to unfold, but you know, the downhill slide was already well in progress by the time I stopped drinking alcohol. So it was only a matter of time, right? That is the proper fear. That's a real fear. That's a fear that you know. That's a fear that you can expect to happen, right? A fear that was going to come true if I didn't change. And you have to look at that from your own perspective as well. Then there's the fear of loss. What exactly are you afraid of losing? What was I afraid of losing? You know, I lost a lot more by my drinking habit, by continuing to drink, than I ever did by stopping drinking alcohol, right? That's for sure. You know, when you stop, despite what your fear to the contrary is telling you, you only gain in life. Getting alcohol out of your life is a gain. But everything else, once you're following onto a pathway that is leading you somewhere good, you are gaining. And that fear of rejection by who? You know, the other drinkers around you, those people that really shouldn't play a part in your progress going forwards. You know, if they're going to reject you because you don't drink anymore, because you're not poisoning yourself anymore, you know, what kind of friends are they anyway? Those who care about you, those who care about your health and your life, they're never going to reject you for trying to improve yourself. They're going to encourage you to improve yourself. I think fear of rejection is also a kind of fear of failure, that if we fail in life, we're going to be rejected. You know, how much of failure in your life, how much of the failure is going to happen in your life because you continue down that path of continuing to drink. You know, there's literally nothing to fear once you stop drinking alcohol, completely the opposite. And it's not that difficult to pull this off, right? Stopping drinking alcohol. Right? Keep the alcohol out of your mouth. That's the first step. Follow a good process. I'm here to help you with that if I can. Focus your mind forwards to what you want in life instead of backwards to what you used to have. You know, and think about what you used to have. Right? Focus on building yourself a life where you are a stronger, much more resilient, confident person in your life, and you will never need alcohol again. You'll get rid of that fear as well. Muhammad Ali said, "The fight is won or lost far away from witnesses, behind the lines, in the gym and out there on the road, a long time before I dance under those lights." How you set yourself up in the beginning, you know, the preparation that you do, what you do before you stop the flow of alcohol, that's really going to help to at least reduce by a large amount any fear that you might have. You know, for me, I've got two halves in my adult life, and the turning point in that life, the turning point that split those two halves down the middle, wasn't stopping drinking alcohol, it was making the decision to stop drinking alcohol. That's what changed everything. You know, what happened while I was a drinker, all of that stuff was inevitable. You keep pouring poison into your mouth, and inevitably what is going to happen to you will happen to you. You know, different people suffer different outcomes, different consequences, but we all have consequences to this, right? Whether they're physical, mental, or just in your life, stopping you from doing the things that you should have done. What happened after I stopped drinking alcohol was also inevitable. I am where I am now because of all the things that I've done, because I made that decision, and because I made subsequent decisions after that in the direction that I wanted my life to go. And if that can happen to me, that can also happen to you. Now, I know this because I've seen it over and over and over again. again and again and again. I've seen some of the most unlikely people go through this same process, right? They begin in the same place with fear and doubt, uncertainty, conflict, insecurity, and within a few weeks they're just full of hope, right? Most of the fear then drops away. Right? Once you put yourself, or you allow somebody else to put yourself into a position where you're living through a growth mindset, where stopping drinking alcohol is not an obstacle, it becomes an inevitability, right? You know, the discomfort itself stops being an obstacle. You know, there are some parts of this journey that are just uncomfortable, and there's nothing you can do to get away with that. Sometimes they're even a bit painful, especially the more psychological stuff that you put yourself through, right? But it's a natural part of the process. It's supposed to happen that way. You know, it's like if you were going to the gym and you're trying to pump iron to put on some muscle. You know, let's say you're pumping up your biceps, and the pain that you get in your biceps towards the end of your set, you know, that burn, that's part of the process. You expect it. It's natural for that to happen. You want that burn, you know. It's the burn that tells you that you're absolutely on the right track. I'll give you another example of when you're on a diet. You know, you're trying to lose a few pounds, and you know that a certain amount of hunger is expected. A bit of discomfort here and there is expected as part of the process. You know, I think it helps you to see also that most of the hunger that you were feeling before, that you were feeding before, is psychological, or it's emotional hunger, and it's natural. It's a natural part of the process to accept that hunger and go with it. You know, it's expected, and you get used to it. So before you set out on any of these things, you know that you're going to feel discomfort at some stage of the change, and usually earlier on, you know, and it's a discomfort that diminishes as you go on. You can turn up the discomfort in your head by telling yourself mental stories about what might happen to you, but you can also turn it down. That's the fear again, you know. So if I want to change something in my life, I read books, or I'll do courses, or I'll watch videos. If I want to change something fast, I take on a coach, because it's one of the quickest ways for me to get where I want to go, right? You know, it costs a bit of money, but I tell you, it's worth it. It's also one of the easiest ways for me, because in the long run, even though it might be tough in the moment, the coach can really help you to see specific things very quickly, and then you see results sooner. You're putting in less effort in the long term, and you're saving really your precious time for other things that you want to do. I remember one of my personal coaches when I was in Spain. This fella was a complete animal. He stopped being a gym instructor not long after I was training with him. He became a cop, you know, not one of the local cops, but one of the National Guardia Civil. And like I said, he was an animal. He was built like a tank. And anyway, one of the first sessions that I had with this guy was an arm session, and he pushed me so hard that when I got back into my car after the session, so we're talking about 10 minutes warm up, 50 minutes of doing the arms, I think we did some of the shoulders and back as well, and then 10 minutes cool down. I got into the car and I could hardly lift my hands onto the steering wheel. My hands were that screwed. It just drained my muscles of all their energy. But he told me beforehand what he was going to do to me. He told me beforehand what I should expect, right? And he knew exactly what buttons to press. So that session really prepared me for everything else that was going to come. And that's what this tip is about. Preparation is always an essential component of the process. It's always an essential component of our process. You know, we have a 2-week preparation module, even a quick start for those who want to get started straight away. If you set yourself up in advance, you really can define the rest of your journey before you take that first step, right? You can eliminate a lot of the fears, because you know, most of the fears are bullshit ideas that are floating around in your head. You know, I've been there. I've coached thousands of people who go through those same fears. And as I said before, there's very few fears that I haven't come across, or there's very few fears that I know that can't be eliminated very quickly with just a specific bit of advice, and it makes all the difference, you know, being able to start out with calmness and confidence and having trust in the process. You know, you're stepping over into your new life with that frame of mind. And you know, there's a golden opportunity at the beginning of this, at the beginning of any big change. And you know, there's massive amounts of potential that you can open up for yourself, right? Everything about this journey should be based on the outcome that you want, right? Please don't let the outcome just be stopping drinking alcohol. You know, like I said, there's a massive opportunity for change, and it's a very small window of opportunity that you've really got to make the most of. You know, think about the saying, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, and stopping putting in this drug into your body is that first step. You know, you'll never get anywhere if you can't pass those first few beginning days. You know, all the lads that I coach, they start out with an end of mind, a desired outcome that they want to achieve, you know, that they want to achieve in their lives. You know, some of their outcomes might not be what I want, but that doesn't matter. You know, sometimes they don't know what they want to achieve in the beginning, right? But it's important to figure that out as quickly as we can, right? So that, you know, that's what we're basing everything else on. So stopping the toxin isn't the end, it's the beginning. And it's really simple. Your journey of 1,000 miles begins with the single step. Step 1, stop the alcohol. Step 2, that's got nothing to do with the alcohol, nothing, right? Step 2 is the first step towards the consistent outcomes that you want to achieve in your life. So forget the cravings, forget the discomfort, forget any fear. Like I've said before, that's part of the process. It's the entry fee that you have to pay for the life that you want to live, right? You know, the discomfort is normal. It's supposed to happen that way. It's the burn that lets you know that you're moving in the right place, that muscle burn that lets you know you're moving in the right direction. And the beauty of having a vision of where you want to go is that you don't need to be pushed. Once you have a highly desirable outcome that you want to go towards, a highly desirable outcome in mind, that vision that you have of that outcome, that's going to blur out everything else. You don't look backwards then. You know, what you focus on is what you get. Keeping a positive outcome at the front of your mind, it prevents you from seeing the fear or having that fear of the unknown, right? If the outcomes you want are strong enough in your mind, they become strong enough to conquer anything. Conor McGregor had this saying, and he said he believes in visualizing things before they happen. He believes in seeing them happen in his mind and then making them happen in reality. You know, it's how we do anything, right? How we do anything in this world, good or bad. You know, think about where your actual fear comes from, the fear of the unknown, the fear of rejection. All those fears that you have, they come from your mind, right? The fears come from you telling yourself stories about yourself. Not about what is going to happen, but what might happen according to your imagination, right? What might happen. So I'll leave you with this point from a guy called Nikos Kazantzakis, and he was the guy that wrote Zorba the Greek. People, if you're older, you probably know this from the movie with, I can't remember your man's name now, but he said you have your brush, you have your colours, you paint the paradise, and then in you go. So choose where you want to be. Paint the picture in your mind of the place that you want to go to. Prepare for it. Step into that new life. Now, if you're looking to stop drinking alcohol and you want to use it as one of the biggest opportunities to grow your health, your relationships and your wealth, go to habitsv2.com. So having a personal paradise that's pulling you forward is one thing, but there's also nothing like lighting a fire under your own arse to get you up and running. That's actually a fire engine right there, right? So if you're lighting a fire, you can put it out. This is what we call motivation from behind, or another way of saying it is push motivation. Now, when somebody says feel the fear and do it anyway, this is what they're talking about, push motivation, right? They mean that you take the fear of something, usually an alternative reality to the one that you're about to take, the old reality of drinking, for instance, and you use that fear to leverage your immediate action in the direction that you want to go. If I continue down this path that I'm on, then this is what's going to happen. Now, one of the biggest motivations came for me, one of the biggest motivations that kept me going in this journey during my early days especially, was the fear of what would happen if I ever decided to go back to my old way of thinking about things. And if I was getting strong urges, I had this visualization that I used to do with myself. And it was one of me lying in a bed, dying of, the last few days of me dying of cirrhosis of the liver. My skin and eyes are yellow, they're pale. My stomach is all swollen with fluid. I'm covered with bruises. I'm so tired that I can hardly move. I can't lift my head off the pillow. I'm confused about where I am, and I'm finding it very difficult to focus on anything else. And then I see my son walking into the room, and I see him covering his nose up. My liver isn't working at all anymore, so all the toxins that my liver is supposed to be processing are seeping out through my skin. And they're stinking up the whole room. That's why he's covering up his mouth. And he stood over me and he's looking down at me, at the shell of what his dad used to be, right? And his face is just filled with pity, and there's a mixed with revulsion about what he sees. And I can see the tears in his eyes. I swear to God, this really gets me still 11 years later, and I can feel it. It's a powerful emotion. So you need to find something like that gives you big, massive emotional impact. Now think about the ghost of Christmas Future, who gives Ebenezer Scrooge this vision of what's going to happen to him in the future if he doesn't make changes happen in his life. That's what I used to give myself with that idea, a fear from the old path, which really keeps you on the new path. My son has been such a huge motivation, right, all the way through this journey for me. He's been a huge influence on me in my life since he was born, really, but especially in dealing with these personal fears, right? One of my best days came a couple of years ago when my son told me that he'd had enough of drinking. It took him long enough, right? But that was one of the biggest reasons why I stopped drinking alcohol in the first place, to encourage him. So when he finally gave in and followed in his old man's footsteps, it was another personal vision that had really come true for me. So sometimes the only way that you can really save yourself is to save other people. So when you give yourself massive reasons for doing things, you'll find that there are very few obstacles that are going to stand in your way, right? Fear drops away in the face of true personal meaning, right? Deep personal meaning that really gets you in your heart, that inspires you, that gives you passion to move forwards. There's a book that I read. I try to read it every year, but at least once every 2 years, and it's a book by a guy called Viktor Frankl called Man's Search for Meaning. And one of the quotes from this book that is just burned into my mind is, "He who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow." Find meaning in what you do, and you're going to quickly conquer your fear of the very thing that's holding you back, right? Nothing is waiting for you on this side of the door except more fear. And I'm talking about more realistic fear. If you stay on this side of the door and you continue down the path that you're on, think about what's waiting for you. The day I visualized myself lying in that bed, stinking because my liver wasn't working anymore, that scared the life out of me, because I knew that that's where I was heading in reality. Maybe it wouldn't have been cirrhosis of the liver, right? Maybe it would have been saggy heart syndrome, or maybe it was alcoholic wet brain. On the other hand, everything that you ever wanted in this journey, everything that you ever dreamed of getting, all your potential, your hopes and your dreams and your joys and your happiness, that's on the other side of that door. Not fear, right? You only see fear because you're still on this side of the door, right? Because you haven't taken that first step. You're still in the drinker's mind. You're still in the mentality of, I'm drinking for fear. I need to drink to escape from my fear. I need to drink to whatever, it's you're on this side. So once you step over, you spend a little while acclimatizing yourself, acclimatize into your new self, you focus your mind on consistent positive outcomes that you want out of your life. And that fear is going to vanish into thin air. It's just as simple as that. All the good things that you want in life, they're hidden in the places that, we really don't want to go to, right? Places that we're afraid to go to, I think. I don't know if that's by design, if that's on purpose, maybe, but it seems to hold true in all parts of life, right? If you want something bad enough, something that has that potential to bring you great happiness, right? Great contentment in your life, it always seems very difficult to find. I think the fact that it's going to offer you such great happiness and such contentment, and if you can only bypass these certain things, that brings you a certain amount of fear, because there's a fear then of huge loss, there's a fear of we think is unattainable, at least for us. That's one of the biggest fears, is fear of loss. I think that ties in with the fear of failure. It ties in with the fear of rejection. You're losing something. So those fears are, they're always going to be in your mind, right? They're wrapped up in lack of confidence, or they're hidden behind obstacles that you've made yourself in your head. But once you step over that threshold, there's always a moment of, the aha moment, the famous aha moment, when you see there's nothing to be scared about in the first place. It's like in a dark room, you turn on the light, there's nothing there, right? When I was a kid, I was afraid of the monster underneath the bed, and then, my dad would come in, show me under the bed, turn the lights on and stuff, and I was grand. But then as soon as the lights went back off again, it's just the way it is, isn't it? But, as we're adults, we get a bit more wise about stuff like that, hopefully. Think about your life, the fear of the unknown. That's been happening since, as I said, the day that you stood up on your own 2 feet and you managed to let go of the sofa to take that first step. Fear is only as deep as your mind allows. I don't know who said that one. Probably Buddha or someone like that. So anyway, let's end it here. Here's the 5 tips again. The first one is, if you understand where your fear is coming from, you're going to easily undermine the foundation of that fear. 90% of it, 99% of it, it's the fear is completely unjustified. Number 2 is, the best antidote to any fear is taking action. And before you take action, prepare. One of the American presidents, Abraham Lincoln, said that if you gave him 6 hours to chop down a tree, he'd spend the first 4 sharpening the axe. Number 3 is, you get what you focus on. So have a vision of the future, and laser focus on that. Laser focus on that thing that you desire the most in your future, right? Everything else, you have to consider the price of entry, the consequences of you drinking all that time. You've got to put up with that now, right? The discomfort, the cravings, that's all part of that process. Number 4 is, take an alternative road. The alcohol road that you're on already, we see where that leads you, right? Feel that fear of continuing down that road, and let that light a fire underneath your arse to get you moving forwards, right? And number 5 is, everything you want is waiting on the other side of the door of change. Fear can make the road ahead seem to be insurmountable when you're on this side of the door. But once you step over that line, you aim for consistent positive outcomes, and you develop strong processes to hold those outcomes in place, then the road becomes very, very easy. Take care of yourself, and I'll speak to you in the next video. Onwards and upwards. Keep the alcohol out of your mouth, eh?